Welcome to Flight Chat, the listener feedback show for the FLITEcast. My name is Ray. Thank you so much for joining me here. It is Sunday as the time of me recording this. I'm in a bittersweet mode. My Tigers lost, sports-wise, a little sports ball. They lost yesterday, so they're out of the playoffs. That didn't work out. No, I'm not rooting for Cleveland. Screw Cleveland. I could not care less with respect to them winning. I don't want to see them win. No, not at all. I don't want the Yankees to win either. I don't really care about baseball at this point once my team is out. I have ejected the season. Doesn't matter. And I'm also in a bittersweet mode with respect to football because even though I got to see a thoroughly dominant and absolutely destructive performance by the Detroit Lions in an awesome revenge game against the Dallas Cowboys, it came at the expense of our best defensive player, Aiden Hutchinson, getting hurt. And so that was just very bittersweet. Like that's the life of being a Detroit sports fan. It just, just when we think everything is going great, something stupid like that has to happen. Screw you, football gods. We were having such a great day, and now we got to worry about the rest of our season because of that ridiculousn's. But either way, that's the mindset that I'm in right now. No, I still have not seen Joker Folie. I'm still not entirely certain if I'm going to see it in theaters. Maybe in the next couple of days. I don't know if it's still in theaters. We'll see. But at any rate, enough chit-chat. Let's get right into the feedback for this particular week. And we'll start with John, whose email this week is titled, Just a Short Rant, When Should I Send My Joker 2 Review and Other Questions? Well, he asked the question, when should he send it, but it seems like he sent it at the end of this particular email. First, he offered an apology. He said, sorry, I got carried away with my scenario last flight chat. No apologies necessary. It was just beyond the scope of what I was asking for with that question. But it was very detailed and definitely, like I said, very fan-oriented in terms of like the creative ideas on what they would do going forward with that. But here, let's get to the rest of your email. You said, 1, really happy that they finally got Green Lantern actors for the DCU show. I'm really beginning to reevaluate the people I am friends with on social media. There is just way too much pessimism over Gunn and Safran taking over. It's not just Snyderverse sycophants either, it's people who have a bone to pick with Zaslav. And I've seen people call DC damaged goods even before Joker Folie, but even more so now. It's like after these string of flops, they believe all DC movies can do now is flop. But sure, let's pretend Sony and Marvel Studios have fared so much better these last 2 years. SMH. Reeves' stuff, I believe, will be fine. If the Batman can make $770 million and be almost 3 hours, and the Penguin has an average 9 million viewers per episode, then I feel as though Batman Part 2 will be fine. DC isn't a monolith. Fans aren't a monolith. Superman next year, I feel, will make between 5 to 600 million, which, of course, the narrative will be it made less than Man of Steel, so it's a failure. With respect to all of that, I agree with you. It's not a monolith. And, going back to Batman, we've gone over this already, John, and we'll just reiterate. Batman and Robin is the closest that Batman has ever gotten to being an actual failure at the box office, and even that movie was not a failure. One more time, just for the cheap seats, for anybody that is interested, Batman and Robin made $107.3 million domestically, $130.9 million internationally, a grand total of $238.25 million worldwide. That was against a production budget of $125 to $160 million, considered a box office disappointment at the time, according to Wikipedia. That's the last time that Batman was a financial failure, if you will, or at least a disappointment, right? Not an out-and-out bomb, but a disappointment at the box office. Since then, we've had the Dark Knight trilogy, all of which made money, right? Begins made enough money to justify 2 sequels, both of which made $1 billion. Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, $873.6 million, or 0.2, whichever one it is, I forget. But it made money. We know that it made profit, right? The Batman, as you just said, $770 million. Batman doesn't fail. He does not. He doesn't fail, and Spider-Man doesn't fail. So he'll be fine. I'm not worried about the Batman Part 2 whatsoever. That movie will sell just as well, if not better, than the first one did. Especially, like you say, the Penguin doing as well as it is on HBO, we're fine. The people that are throwing dirt on DC like it's a dead thing, it's like, seriously, guys, if the Schumacher films and Green Lantern and Jonah Hex didn't kill DC movies, then what will? Seriously, come on. Like, remember all the other DC failures that occurred, outside of Batman and Superman, and then Man of Steel made $668 million? Give me a break. Seriously. So you're right. You do need to maybe prune down your friends list, to be honest with you, John, because anybody that's being this pessimistic over DC is a moron. Seriously. They're just not. They're letting their emotions dictate what they believe, and they're not looking at the actual data, to be honest with you. And I'm not going to say they're not being objective, because they can't be objective. None of us can be objective. But if we look at the data, we have every reason to believe that DC will succeed on some level. We just don't know how much. And it doesn't matter whatever narratives they try to craft about it. It all depends on what builds upon what going on to the future of the DCU when it actually launches. But John continues with this. He says, the reputation DC live-action films get is ridiculous. Like, there's a YouTube channel that only reacts to DC animated movies and avoids the live films like the plague, and they've also reacted to some live-action Marvel films. Not all of them, but still. It's why I think it's brilliant introducing some characters in animation first using the live-action actors who will eventually play them in live-action. Because let's imagine a chat room for a second. Oh, here we go, another fictional scenario. He says, some guy says DC sucks at live-action, but their animated movies are fire, they should just make those. And then the Flash is introduced animated, he says. This Flash is so charming and acts the same when he's in live action. Some guy goes, he's so charming, I just love this iteration of the Flash so much that I'll give the live action a chance if it's really the same guy. He says, that's my guess on what will happen, but it's the internet, so you know people will still want to keep a colloquial narrative. Yeah, I mean, I see your point with respect to that. I mean, bottom line, John, the general audience is what dictates this. The general audience does not care about the past. They don't. They really don't. The general audience looks at it and goes, oh, I have a favorite Batman. Let's check this one out. Or I heard that Batman movie was really good. Or it's Batman. I'm going to go see it. Same with Superman, right? Because these characters have been around for nearly, well over 80 years, going into 90 years for a number of them. And they have a pedigree. They have a standing, if you will, amongst the general audience worldwide in that regard. So, whatever fan narratives there are out there, that's all they are. They're fan narratives. They don't know shit when it comes to the general audience. They can't allow themselves to see anything with respect to how the general audience is going to relate to any of this. So whatever they're saying, the whole DC animated is better than DC live action thing, the general audience has never parroted that. Never. Not once. Because however much of the general audience watched the DC animated universe, they still turned out for the movies. They still came out and saw the movies. Because again, the majority of the general audience treats superheroes as one genre and goes and sees Marvel and DC. They go see their favorites, right? Their favorite at Marvel is Spider-Man, and their favorite at DC is Batman. And that's not emotional, that's not opinion, we have data. Demonstrable box office data from the last 30 to 40 years alone proving that. Period. And that goes against any fan narrative that anybody wants to spin with respect to death on the DC universe. It doesn't matter what fans say in that regard. Never has, and certainly will not. So bring on the stupid-ass narratives. They'll all get shot down, I'm pretty sure. All right, on to number 2. John says, I highly recommend the reboot anime of the creator of Inuyasha, Rumiko Takashi's other popular show, Ranma 1/2. The animation is great, and I'm enjoying it. For those who don't know, the premise is Ranma Satome and his father Genma travel to China to do martial arts training on bamboo sticks in springs called Jisenkyo. A tour guide warns them not to fall into the springs. Ranma kicks his dad in the spring and turns into a panda. His panda dad knocks Ranma into a spring, and Ranma, a teen boy, is turned into a teen girl. They revert back into their normal selves with hot water, but turn back into their cursed spring forms with cold water. Despite trying to find a way to cure their condition, Ranma's dad forces him to go back to Japan, and Ranma ends up getting match-made into a marriage to a girl named Akane, who hates men, but her sisters thought it would be best if she married someone who's half-girl. Wacky adventures with silly characters ensues. Back in the day, my friend and I worked on an abridged series based on the original anime called Ranma 1/2, The Abridged Chronicles. Some episodes were taken down due to copyright issues, but most of them are up. I know you don't watch the abridged series that much, but would you be open to watching our abridged series, maybe to see if the series is up your alley? It's not really a serialized show like Dragon Ball or One Piece or even Inuyasha. You can jump in on any episode. Usually I would write the first draft, and my collaborator Elite Slayer X would make the final draft and edit the episode using iMovie. I sometimes edited some episodes on Windows Movie Maker to give him a break once in a while. If you don't want to watch our entire abridged series, here's a list of my own personal favorites. Episode 5 is largely an homage to Scrubs. It's a personal one for me since a friend of mine who passed away had a small role in it. Episodes 6 and 7 are kind of a two-parter. We use Duel of Fates for a battle. Episode 14, But my top two, he says, are the only TV movies we worked on, including one about a phoenix bird stuck on the head of a rival of Ranma's named Tadawake Kuno. And we make just the most insane amount of Beatle references. For anyone who wants to check out our old abridged series from 2008 to 2013, as much of it that is left, either search Elite Slayer X's YouTube channel or my YouTube channel, Zom Gruler, Zo My God Ruler. Just a heads up, we've only done 16 of the 90-something episodes of the original anime, plus 2 out of the 15 TV movies. There's also a live-action TV movie we considered dubbing over, and some specials. We also experimented on other abridged stuff. I did a miniseries one based on a Street Fighter anime movie, and X did some one-shot abridging at panels. Well, I hear you. That's cool. That's awesome. Probably not something that I will necessarily get into myself, John, but thank you for offering it to any of the other listeners that may want to check it out and take a part in it. My list is already long enough. You know that, man. But I appreciate the thought and the suggestion. No doubt about that. All right, and on to your third question. You said, okay, Ray, I think enough episodes of The Penguin have come out to compare it to other shows now. What do you think of the parallels to shows like The Sopranos? I think the dynamic between Oz and Victor reminds me a lot of Walter White and Jesse Pinkman in Breaking Bad. Any other shows it reminds you of? Well, if you would listen to DCTV Squadcast, John, the most recent episode just came out a couple of days ago. Our recording schedule got thrown off a little bit, but we've definitely been talking about the Penguin over at Squadcast Media, and we have definitely brought up The Sopranos. We've most certainly brought up Breaking Bad. We keep bringing up Breaking Bad a number of times. And, you know, truthfully, it's because the Penguin falls into that genre of shows, right? It's not a copycat. It's not lazy. It is a mob crime show, which means it falls into the same window, same genre as The Sopranos, same genre as Breaking Bad. So yeah, absolutely there are similarities. No question about it. And I didn't even need 3 episodes to be able to compare it. I think the first episode, the tone and tenor and the characters, you could definitely make those comparisons and just how certain things go. Absolutely, without question. And again, not lazy, not any type of slight. It's absolutely a compliment to compare it to those shows, because those are high quality shows for both, you know, in HBO's case with The Sopranos and also in TNT's case with Breaking Bad. Absolutely groundbreaking shows that have stood the test of time, and the Penguin definitely is living up to the Sunday night 9 o'clock HBO hype. No doubt about that. All right, 4. Here is his review. John's review of Joker Folie. He says there's no spoilers. Also let him know when spoiler talk is available. Well, definitely. Not yet. At least not for me at the moment. But he says, I saw Joker 2 against my better judgment, and honestly, so I've heard a lot of people call Joker Folie effing awful. They're not wrong, he says. At the same time, people say it's actually a good character study and it's misunderstood. They're not wrong. For the first half of the movie, I was on board, he says. It felt like a natural continuation of where the first film left off. There's a pivotal moment that happens in the movie where the film completely lost me. Still, had some moments of brilliance after the moment, but said pivotal moment didn't even get revisited. Remember how the mom in the room said she had breast cancer and that plot never got revisited? Yep. Did the film damage the first film? A bit, but I have to say they really wanted to mess with people's expectations the same way The Last Jedi did, but this time it pissed the vast majority off. Do I think it deserves the hate? A little, he says. Do I think the movie deserves more appreciation? A little. They could have also cut the musical numbers down a peg some. Some made no sense, he says. I wouldn't watch it again, but I have some respect for it. First half is decent, but the second half is just jarring and mostly bad. There's some legit good stuff, but there's also some really horrible scenes that felt like it was written by AI. I honestly don't know if I can recommend this. I feel like 10 of you would be interested, but then the rest of you would take a hard pass on it. Well, that sounds like a very scathing review, John. All right, fair enough. I know at least a handful of people that would disagree with you, and it would not call it jarringly bad in the second half. And I know a few people that do actually enjoy the film as well. So I still feel like when I do watch it, I am going to enjoy it. And you know what? Here, let's take a look here. Because Scott even asked me the other day. He said he was looking for my review and didn't know if I had seen it. I was like, no, I haven't seen it, and I'm not in any hurry to see it. And again, it has nothing to do with all this chatter or all this negativity about it. It's not that at all. It's just it was not that high on my radar. And, you know, I still feel like people are caring a bit too much about this movie. They keep talking about it as a comic book movie. Like they're putting it in the same vein, or at least talking about it in the same vein as like anything in the DCEU or the MCU. And it's not. It's not even close to the Batman Epic Crime Saga. Even that has more of like a comic book movie like connection. When we talk about comic book movies in the general colloquialism, this isn't that. This was always a one-off, and people were questioning whether a sequel should happen even before this was released, even before any of this talk and before it started to alienate people. So yeah, I don't know. Here, if I'm looking at movie times, if I go see this, all right, there's a chance. There's a solid chance that I'll go see this on Wednesday. There is. There's a solid chance I'll see it on Wednesday. And if I do, I'll post a review for it. I will. Actually, you know what? Pardon me. Not Wednesday. I'm sorry. Wednesday was looking at the wrong day. Thursday. There's a decent chance that I may end up seeing it Thursday, perhaps. Although it starts to leave a number of theaters after that. So I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But either way, you know, I'll get a look at it. I'll get a look at it at some way before it finally leaves theaters, which there's only a couple of days if anybody wants to see this. And when I go see it, it'll be perfect because there'll be nobody else in the theater when I do go see it. But I still don't think that I'm going to be so harsh on it. I certainly don't think I'm going to be as harsh as your review, John, and I don't think I'm going to be as harsh as other people that didn't necessarily care for it either. I feel like on some level, I'm still going to enjoy it. That's the beauty of having a wider strike zone when it comes to these things. But either way, thank you for your honest thoughts. Thank you for your spoiler-free thoughts on that, John. Thank you for your feedback, as always. Good sir. All right, next up, it's time for one of Anthony Dorsey's email missives, sent, of course, via Digital Raven. This one is titled Flight Chat 16, Why You Sent the Boy Wonder to Do a Man's Job. Oh, the Joker from Zack Snyder's Justice League. All right. Will that be a glimpse into what he's talking about in this particular email? More than likely. Prepare for some DC-heavy talk here from Anthony. But let's dive into it. He says, Hello there, Ray. I'm back again. I hope you're well. Nothing new with me, so let's dive into what will probably be another lengthy email. Are there any other kind from you, Anthony? I don't think so. He says, feedback for episode 188. Note on Tom King's Batman. I just wanted to clarify something I've heard multiple times from you. You like to tout that you actually liked Tom King's Batman run, and I just wanted to make sure how much of it you liked out of the total 85 issues. I liked it at the start as well, and I'm pretty sure it was well regarded for a while. That was until a specific turning point with issue 50 led to the last 35 issues getting a much more mixed to negative response, leading to people looking back on the whole run negatively. I'm only mentioning it because you said you haven't finished, and I'd recommend finishing it to see if you actually like the whole thing or just the early issues that most everyone liked. To me, this is like someone saying they love the sequel trilogy, but they've only seen The Force Awakens, the first and most well-regarded part of the trilogy. Maybe you will like the whole thing, maybe you won't, but you won't know until you experience the whole thing yourself. Please take this recommendation it's intended to be, and not as criticism, which it isn't. Also, you said you liked James Tynion in the fourth Detective Comics run, and I wanted to mention that if you finish that, he was the one who took over Batman after King, and he did a great job, though he didn't stay on for 85 issues like King. Alright, so with respect to your first part of this, I got to about issue 30 or 31 with King, but here's the thing, Anthony. I heard people talking shit about it even before it got to the issues that I was in. I heard people that didn't care for Tom King's run back in those first 30 issues. So maybe you didn't hear that, but I totally heard that. Either way, to be honest with you, whatever happens in issue 50, I do want to go back and read the whole run. I most certainly do. And I'll probably reread the first 30 issues that were in that, although I know there's a shared arc or two in between that and Detective Comics and one of the other books that I would have to, Nightwing, I think it was, that I would have to reread. I don't know. I'll see what I'll do when I finally cross that bridge in that regard. But I'm willing to bet, Anthony, that based on our previous conversations with respect to strike zones, and especially bringing up your sequel trilogy example, I'm probably still going to like the run for what it is. Because you mentioned the sequel trilogy. Someone saying that they loved it, but they've only seen The Force Awakens. Well, I've seen all of it, and I still enjoy all of it. We know that you don't. We know that you do not enjoy The Rise of Skywalker. So I will just go ahead and say that even when I do read the rest of Tom King's Batman run, I'm probably still going to enjoy it. Will I enjoy it as much as the first 30 issues? I don't know. Like, will I enjoy the entirety? Well, how I felt in the first 30 issues, will I still feel the same way through all 85? I don't know. But I find it very difficult to believe that I will dislike it, truthfully, to be honest with you. It takes a lot for me to dislike a thing with respect to any medium, whether it's movies, TV, comics, whatever it is. It takes a lot for me to dislike it. And I try not to let fan perception guide that for me either. It's difficult sometimes, especially with Marvel, but I do try to just focus on my own subjective appraisal with respect to that. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But here, you have an answer to our question a week or so ago, the question of what DC or Marvel movie would you erase and start over with? You said that you would erase Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. He says you might be confused by that, but notice two words I didn't include: Ultimate Edition. Well, no, I was not confused whatsoever. I saw exactly what you were doing. You said, I've long held the opinion that cutting 30 minutes out of that movie was the true start of the dominoes falling that killed the DCEU. If we could just erase the theatrical cut from existence and release the 3-hour version in theaters, it wouldn't have been as hated. Warner Brothers wouldn't have panicked and changed Suicide Squad and Justice League, and some form of the original plan would have been completed. If erasing one cut of a movie that has two cuts doesn't fit your scenario, then yeah, I'll erase Age of Ultron. No further explanation is needed. I've given the reasons for my vendetta enough. No, I think the BVS answer counts. I do, because it's not Justice League, right? It's not. I took Justice League, any of that, Justice League 2017, I took that off the table, and I hear you. That argument is absolutely out there. The idea that if the 3-hour version of BVS had been released, and I used to believe back in the day, like there were people that were like, well, 3 hours is too long. There's no way they would have had less show times. And yet, Walter Hamada and his ilk gave us a 2-hour and 57-minute Batman movie 2 years ago. Now, how come that was okay, right? Why? Because it was post-pandemic and you knew it was only going to be out for 45 days before you put it on HBO Max? Like, is that the reason? Well, that's a silly reason in that regard. That doesn't make any sense because you cut off the earning potential at the box office for the Batman. I don't know that it would have broken $1 billion, but it would have gotten closer had it not just gone, out of theaters after 45 days in that regard. But why was it okay then, but not okay for Batman v Superman? Like, what changed in 6 years? Well, I'll tell you what changed in 6 years. All of the meddling and all of the mistakes and all the errors and all of the downward spiral that Warner Brothers itself created for the DCEU. That's absolutely what is different, or what was different with respect to that. So I hear you. The 3-hour and 2-minute long version of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, the Ultimate Edition in itself, is the more complete movie. It's the actually complete movie. Puts back the Lois subplot, puts back the Clark subplot where he's investigating Batman, puts back so many other moments, if you will, that the general audience, yes, I think would have absolutely appreciated and definitely, would it have experienced the second week drop off? I don't know. I don't know that would have, truthfully, and would more critics have been favorable to it? Perhaps. I mean, either way, I think that I agree with you that there would have been more favorable response to the actual version of the movie being released instead of the theatrical cut. But we'll never know, unfortunately, because it's all a what if at this point. But I'm with you. That's a viable answer. Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Not the Ultimate Edition. If the Ultimate Edition was the only one that existed, basically, is what he's saying. All right. So on to previous email feedback, he says. As far as I know, he says, I can talk about the movie I worked on, but I only cannot share or post any photos I took to social media. I'm sharing the article again because I'd like the listeners to maybe keep it in mind for whenever it releases. I wasn't familiar with anyone involved before working on it, but one of the leads, Banks, has a pretty impressive resume if you check him out on IMDb. And the article, it's a Deadline.com article. Kingston, Roomy, Southwick, and Banks repeated to top-line horror thriller Henry's Ebb from Thomas Mendelia. This was published on September 3rd by Matt Grobar. So yes, you can go check that out. What is it? Henry's Ebb is the thriller, the movie that Kingston Roomy is working on. Okay, fair enough. Cool, thank you. Appreciate that. Batman Caped Crusader follow-up. Anthony says, the main reason I get hung up on the Bat family being excluded from a lot of Batman adaptations is that I like those characters just as much, if not more, than I like Batman. I'm a big fan of Nightwing, Red Hood, Damian Wayne, Cassandra Cain, and the rest both individually and as a group. When they keep Batman in his early years, it usually means that most of those characters won't have any chance of even appearing, let alone getting a story arc of their own. You can do a Batman show or a Flash or Aquaman movie anytime one is ready, but a Nightwing project, for example, is contingent on a Batman being around and established. I also never said they haven't been in any adaptation because that's obviously not true. Batman the Animated Series, Arkham Trilogy, Young Justice, and Titans, for the record I did hate what they did with Red Hood and Batman in Season 3 and didn't finish it, are just a few of such adaptations, he says. You know I'm excited for Brave and the Bold, but forgive me for wanting something new with those characters before I hit 30, because that movie is at least 4 years away at best. there's no guarantee that the movie will even come out. I'm simply more interested in a seasoned Batman, so some of my favorite DC characters can even exist in an adaptation rather than seeing the same villain origins yet again, albeit with some well-done twists on some of those origins. Yeah, well, here's the issue that I have with that, Anthony. Just playing devil's advocate a little bit here. Although not to really play devil's advocate because I don't really do that. I come from a different perspective on this because I am the Batman fan first and foremost. The Bat family, I can truthfully take it or leave it, honestly, and that doesn't mean I dislike Dick Grayson or Jason Todd or Babs or anything like that. Most certainly no. I enjoy all of them. And I did finish season 3 of Titans, and I was perfectly fine with their interpretation. I know it's different, but that was the point. The point was that it was supposed to be different. But either way, the problem is that if you don't have a Batman set this up first, like you said, well, then you run the risk of Chris McKay's Nightwing movie happening, right? Now, would you have been okay with that if it was a standalone film? Because that was going to happen, and someone can still do that. That's the thing, right? Do Nightwing books have to come out in the comics, after a Batman book? Like, does it have to be tied to that? Does there have to be something connecting Batman to Red Hood and the Outlaws? Or is it just assumed and accepted that that's going to be the case? I feel like there's a way that Bat Family could still be introduced if, by itself, right? If there was a decent enough pitch for it, right? And I don't know why, whatever reasons there are that they don't necessarily do this. I do know that I can't blame Hollywood for continuing to go to the well with Batman because they know how successful he is by himself, right? As far as the Bat Family stuff, I mean, look, Brave and the Bold, okay, you want it to come out before you're 30. Dude, it's not going to happen. I mean, but I don't really see why that's a big deal. Why do we act like 30 is like this, oh my goodness, it's the beginning of the end? I'm so sick of that shit, to be honest with you. I'm 41, and I have coworkers that treat 30 like it's some type of death knell, and it's like, get out of my face. I am so tired of that. It is utterly ridiculous. Like, age in many cases is nothing but a number. And if you ever get a chance to see a Bat Family adaptation like you hopefully will with Brave and the Bold, you should cherish that. You should enjoy that. And I'm not saying that you won't enjoy it, but I just don't dig the impatience. That's all I'm saying. The impatience for it. It's not like Batman hasn't succeeded on his own. And it's not like we haven't seen Bat Family adaptations. I know that you want to see a massive one cinematically. But, I mean, there's been struggles. If you want to blame anybody, you don't blame reluctance necessarily to use the Bat Family. Blame the upheaval that Warner Brothers has been through and how long it's taken them to get to this point where DC is its own autonomous studio. That affects everything in that regard, right? I mean, who knows, had the DCEU been allowed to continue in its original path, maybe we do get Bat Family at some point. Maybe that Chris McKay Nightwing movie does actually happen. And maybe we're having a completely different conversation about the Bat Family in that regard. So I hear what you're saying, and on some level I get it, but, I mean, how many people had to wait until they were well past 30 or even my age, 40, before they saw an Aquaman movie, right? There are Aquaman fans out there. Dare I say that because Aquaman was a member of the Justice League, and the Justice League was arguably a bigger group popularity-wise necessarily than the Avengers, that there have been more Aquaman fans historically than there were Iron Man fans, right? And yet, those fans waited how long? Until like 2018 before Jason Momoa could bring their superhero to prominence, right? So it's a waiting game for a lot of people, for a lot of fandoms that are not Batman and Superman. How long did it take for Wonder Woman to get on the big screen? Okay? How many years after Linda Carter's interpretation in the 70s, which was not big screen, which was small screen, how long did it take before Wonder Woman fans could see that on the big screen? How about Flash fans? Flash fans, if they didn't like last year's movie, they're still waiting for a good Flash adaptation, subjectively speaking, in that regard. Anybody that didn't necessarily care for either version, the bastardized, horribly whitewashed version of Justice League, or Zack Snyder's Justice League, if you didn't care for either one, you're still waiting for a Justice League movie. So, you're not the only one necessarily waiting for stuff, man. And I get the impatience from fans, but it's just like, whatever, it's going to happen. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. It has happened. Not on the big screen, but I just don't see how it's not going to, right? I don't... Superheroes have always been here, and for people that are worried about the bubble bursting, no, I don't see that. Especially not at this point. Because you got Marvel regrouping, and you've got DC regrouping, right? Both of them are regrouping for different pushes in this regard, right? MCU taking a different turn and a different task, in the post-Kang world, if you will. DC going with the DCU in that regard. So I don't foresee that we're not going to see it, to be honest with you. So I guess, and again, this isn't an unbiased position because, again, I've got my Batman fix. I don't have to worry about that. I'm always going to get my Batman fix. And I know that you necessarily can't say the same with respect to Bat Family, but I just find it difficult to believe that Bat Family is going to get ignored. And in fact, it won't get ignored so long as the DCU succeeds. So whether you get it before you're 30 or not, Anthony, just pray or root for the success of Superman. Root for the success of Creature Commandos and Lanterns and Supergirl and Peacemaker Season 2. Root for the success of the DCU, because all of that success will further cement and guarantee that you will get Bat Family when Brave and the Bold comes out. And I don't care how old you are, Anthony, you will enjoy it when you see it. That's all I will say about that. Continuing on, Ahsoka the Patterson cut, he says. He says, I agree that personally I wouldn't have wanted to make it into a movie, though I would have liked it if the season was at least 12 episodes instead of 8. A fan editor can't add that much content that wasn't filmed, so I was interested in this cut more to see what he did to the plot and pacing, and also just as an excuse to watch Ahsoka again, but quicker. As for his other cuts, I am interested in Obi-Wan, as that one I did think, should have been a movie, and could benefit from a shorter runtime, though if you just cut out mostly Reva scenes, I'm not going to like that. You know he probably might. And as for Boba Fett, it's more just out of curiosity since he somehow fits elements from Mando Season 2 in there. I also want to make clear that I respect the creative freedom of the original creators, and even if I thought this cut was 10 out of 10, it wouldn't replace the actual show for me, nor would I start saying this version is canon to me. As a video editor, I was curious what another editor could do with the existing show, and the changes shown in the trailer were impressive, and I appreciate the effort he took to make a version of the show that he's even happier with, since he did say he likes the show and recommends this cut only to people who pay for Disney Plus and have seen this show. I get that. I understand that, Anthony. I guess there was a time back in the day where I would have appreciated some of those cuts, like, the I forget who was it, Joseph Gordon-Levitt or whoever it was that made a cut of Phantom Menace that took out all of Jar Jar Binks, right? There was that, or the fan cut that I talked about Star Trek V: The Final Frontier, right? Like, some of those in the past I would have been like, oh, okay, all right, but as I get older, it's like, no, it's not what's canon. It's not what the original intent of the film was in that regard, right? Whatever the creator's original intent, I'm willing to stick by that. If I don't necessarily care for it, then I'll say that I don't care for it. But that's why the whole Justice League thing is where it is, because the original intent of that movie was not Justice League 2017. It was Zack Snyder's Justice League, which is why I will never own Justice League 2017 ever again. I will only own Zack Snyder's Justice League because that was the original creator's intent, not Justice League 2017 in that regard. So that's why it's a different situation with respect to that. All right, so on to some watch updates. Anthony has some thoughts on Superman, the Christopher Reeve story. He says it's a fantastic documentary, the first of its kind from DC Studios, and a fitting first film from the fledgling studio. A fascinating and emotional journey through Christopher Reeve's illness, real-life heroism, and his legacy. View with tissues on hand, 9 out of 10. Yep, I got to find out a way to go see that too, because it's in wide release now. Rings of Power Season 2, no spoilers, he says. I wouldn't say I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, but I love the films as great cinema, he says. I tried to get into the books, but have yet to finish them. This show has gotten endless hate from certain fans since Amazon only has rights to particular parts of the lore. Some timelines have been fudged, and some people just complaining about diversity as usual. All that said, I really liked this season. I don't think it reaches the heights of the films, but that's an impossible bar to cross. Most of the storylines were interesting, though the Hobbit Harfoot storyline was much less important this season than the first. Don't want to spoil too much, but I really liked Galadriel's storyline and character development. The dwarves' story, the epic battle towards the end, Adar's character, and of course the incredible villain performance by the actor playing Sauron, whom I won't spoil for you if you've avoided it so far. On the other end, I felt the Dark Wizard story was underdeveloped, and the Numenor stories were mostly boring for me. Also, shout out to Bear McCreary on the epic score for this series, 8 out of 10. All right? Rings of Power is on the list. Who knows when I'm going to get to it. All right. Here we go. Joker Folie, no spoilers. He says, in case you still haven't seen it by this point, I won't give a ton of thoughts on this. I found the story direction very interesting, and I dug how it ended up, even though I get why people hated it. There were some great scenes and acting, but also some stuff that bored me, as well as all the musical scenes, which mostly didn't work for me in this movie, as they didn't feel entertaining nor particularly needed, especially with so many songs used and no original songs. In short, I like the ideas this movie presented, but not all of the execution. 5 out of 10. I feel like 5 out of 10 is a failing grade. That feels like worse than what you actually said about it. But either way, all right, failing grade, 50% for Joker Folie. I do. Okay. Saturday night. A very fun recreation of the apparent chaos of egos, poor planning, and other issues leading into the airing of the very first episode of SNL, he says. All the casting was on point, especially for the big names like Belushi, Aykroyd, and Chase, played by Gotham's Riddler. That's right. Corey Michael Smith, indeed, playing Chevy Chase in this particular film. Very intriguing in that regard. I would never have thought that, to be honest with you, but I would like to see it. He says, as far as I've read, it's pretty accurate to what happened, but with some stuff thrown in that happened, but not necessarily that night, such as a famous TV personality exposing himself to someone. If you're a fan of SNL, especially classic SNL, then you should check this out. 8 out of 10. Yep, I probably will at some point. Who knows when that's going to happen. He's got some others here. First, Ghost of Yotai. Okay, I've heard about this game in passing and some discussion around it, but he says, finally announced as a sequel to the incredible game of Ghost of Tsushima, which I thought was a near-perfect game with a perfect story arc for its main protagonist, Jin Sakai. I was worried that any sequel could ruin that perfect arc, and luckily the creators thought the same. Yotai is set long after the original with a new protagonist named Atsu, played by Erika Ishii from Dropout. This trailer is beautiful, and I cannot wait for this game, but I want to mention how stupid people are for hating on this game just because it now stars a female protagonist. These man-babies need to get a life, especially the ones attacking Erika online just for playing this character, but also because they embody a lot of the woke ideology that they hate, but also the stuff that makes them such a cool person, and anyone who sees a Dropout show with Erika should get that. Enjoy the trailer, though. Unlike Lost Records, which I've discussed, Ghost of Yotai is a PS5 exclusive. Oh, dear. So that will force me to buy a PS5 if I actually want to play it. Who is... Oh! Okay, I had to Google Erika Ishii. Okay, yes. I don't remember what I've seen her in on Dropout, but I definitely have... I need to put a name, put a face to the name, so I know exactly who you're talking about. Okay, fair enough. All right, Dynamic Duo animated movie announced. To quote Jason Wasaki from Game Changer on Dropout, you're right, Ray, I should be paid as their campaign manager at this point. Yes, she should. Truthfully, and I know this is going to seem insane, I feel like I casted a spell as if it were Beetlejuice. I just went on about wanting to get more Robin and Bat Family content in my last email, and now I discussed it more in this one, written before the news broke that there will be an animated Dynamic Duo movie starring Dick Grayson and Jason Todd. Now, it's still unclear if this is standalone or connected to the DCU, but I'm very interested in this regardless, as it is said to be getting a theatrical release. So just to get those characters finally on the big screen is a win. Yep, there you have it, Anthony. He says, I've seen some conflicting details about what the story will be, but I'm open to adaptation and seeing what they do with this, especially as they're incorporating CGI animation, practical elements of stop motion, and live action real-time performance, which sounds crazy. The studio making this, Swaybox, has a demo reel out there which shows kind of what we can expect, and I can't think of any similar movies to this style. It's like Pixar mixed with Wallace and Gromit. I don't know how it will end up looking exactly like, but I'm excited for any future developments on this project. I also appreciate this being the first official announcement confirmed by Gunn after the initial slate reveal, being one made in partnership with another studio, helping DC Studios not get overextended, as we discussed on Threads. Yes, indeed. On a quick tangent, he says, before finishing, based on our short conversation online when I mentioned pre-ordering the Steelbook for Arcane Season 1, I'd like to more fully recommend the show. After receiving the Steelbook, I just finished rewatching the show, and loved it even more than the first time. It's based on the video game League of Legends, but I know nothing about the game and have been told by my friend who is a fan of the game that Arcane is way better than the game, for what that's worth. It has incredible animation that's Spider-Verse-esque with a great soundtrack, character development, and great action and emotional scenes. I'd be especially interested in hearing your thoughts on the season's antagonists. If you're interested in checking out the show via Steelbook, which is still currently available, or via Netflix, I wanted to share this music video short which ties into the show while also featuring the main theme from the intro sequence. There are trailers I could share, but this video adds some context to a couple of the characters' backstories and also encapsulates the vibes of the show. Enjoy. Yes, he did send that particular link. Arcane, if I remember correctly, and I gotta go here to Blu-ray.com here. Wow, did I lose all of my tabs? Wow, this is terrible. I lost all of my set up tabs. You know how when you go on Google Chrome or use any web browser, it's oh, here's where you went last. All of that is gone. I don't know why all that is gone. That's bullshit. That's ridiculous. But here, Arcane. Learn how to type. Arcane. Let's see. Is this season 1? Well, you know what? Yeah, season 1 available in Steelbook. And then there's also season 2. Is there not? Is there not a season 2 that's also available? Let's see. Or maybe, no, it is just season 1. Interesting. Okay, so, wait, one of them is in a different, is one of them, okay. The red one is regular 2K Blu-ray. The blue one is 4K Blu-ray. Okay, but they are both season 1. All right, so Shout Factory, yeah, maybe so. I don't know. I'll keep an eye out. I'll hang on to that link that you sent with respect to that, because I might pre-order it. I might order it now, because it's now, I think it's available on Amazon now, because it came out about a week or so ago. But at any rate, he says, to finish this email missive off, I have a question for you. I've gone on at length in some emails about some adaptations I don't like of source material that I liked, especially Halo with the Paramount show, and I'm curious, do you have any adaptations that you don't like and are still hoping for a subjectively better version of that source material down the road? Till next time. Okay, I actually do have one, and I don't know, it's tricky, because the version of this that I like isn't exactly source material. However, it could be considered source material to a wide variety of the general audience, and that is the Green Hornet. Now, I didn't read any like Green Hornet comics or, get into the radio drama, from like the 30s and 40s or anything like that, but I am a massive fan of the Green Hornet TV show, the one that came out, what was it, 1967, right? It was in the middle of Batman 66's second season, right? So William Dozier show. I once did a DC TV Squadcast episode at Squadcast Media where I reviewed Batman 66 because during the pandemic in 2020, it was on sale for $20. And so I bought it digitally off of Apple, and I binged like all 120 episodes, right? I did a review of that, but then I also have found all of the episodes of the one and only season of the Green Hornet starring Van Williams and Bruce Lee. And I love that show. That show is amazing. That show is phenomenal. There are things about that show that I like even more than Batman 66. And the thing about it is that when Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg adapted it in 2011, they took a Batman 66 approach to it, and that's not right. And what I mean by that is, if you watch the Green Hornet TV series from 1967, yes, it's produced by William Dozier. Yes, it does take place in the same universe as Batman 66 because there's a crossover episode where the Green Hornet and Kato go to Batman 66, right? There is, which is weird. It's kind of meta because there's also an episode of the Green Hornet where they're watching Batman on TV. So it's a weird, wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey thing that they do. But it's all part of the Dozierverse, if you will. William Dozier was the executive producer of both shows. But whereas Batman 66 was campy and designed for kids, the Green Hornet was an adult show. People died. There were gangsters. There was crime. It was an adult show, right? There was stuff that, you wouldn't show to kids, right? It wasn't on the same level as Batman 66. It was not nearly as campy as Batman 66 was. It was an actual, crime drama in that regard. And Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg basically treated it like it was Batman 66. And so, yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I have watched it. I have tried it. I don't care for it. Not by any stretch of the imagination. And it's not one that I will own or rewatch. And so, yeah, I do subjectively would like a subjectively better version that is closer to the original show, closer to the source material. The Green Hornet is supposed to be a modern-day send-up of the Lone Ranger, right? Which, of course, goes into more Batman ties and characteristics and whatnot, right? But, yeah, that's one for sure, an adaptation where, a whole generation of younger people, millennials or Gen Z or whoever, watch the Green Hornet movie and think that the Green Hornet was like Batman 66. It wasn't. It was not at all. Watch the pilot episode. Go back and watch the pilot episode of Green Hornet. It's called The Silent Gun. You can find it on YouTube. Trust me, you can. Find that episode on YouTube and just watch it. And you'll know immediately, within the first, not even 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes, that it is not like Batman 66 tonally. It's very different. Very different tonally in that regard. And so I just did not appreciate that Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg took a 66 tone to it, because that's not how the original show was. So yeah, that's one that I don't care for sure, definitely. I probably would have a similar opinion of Get Smart, the adaptation with Steve Carell, pardon me, I don't know why I was saying Steve Carell and Anne Hathaway. I probably would have a similar opinion of that if I had watched the movie, because I love that show. I love the Get Smart TV series, the original Buck Henry, Mel Brooks comedy series with Don Adams and Barbara Feldon and Ed Platt. And I loved that show. That's a fantastic show. That's another one that I bought on sale during the COVID times, if you will, when it was on the scene in 2020 first out. I bought that because it was on sale, and I love that show. It's one of my favorite sitcoms. And I would probably have some strong opinions on how the movie adapted it because it's quite different, but, it is what it is. So that would probably be another one that more than likely I would want like a subjectively better version. But I don't know. I can't necessarily make that official determination because I still haven't watched the Get Smart movie to this point. But yeah, the Green Hornet for sure, maybe Get Smart. Those are the two that I can immediately think of where, and again, it's tricky with the Green Hornet because it's not technically, the show from 1967 is not technically source material, though it is. When you consider how Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg decided to adapt it, they made assumptions. Part of me wonders if they ever watched the Green Hornet show, or if they decided after watching it, yeah, we better make this more like 66. I vehemently disagree with that choice. And it's nothing again. I mean, Seth Rogen, come on, he was part of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, which is arguably the best Ninja Turtles movie made to date, in my opinion. That was an outstanding movie. I own that movie. And I do like some of Seth Rogen's other work, but when it comes to the Green Hornet, I think he did an absolutely piss poor job adapting it, in my opinion. So that's probably my strongest example that I can give you with respect to an adaptation that strays away from source material, if you will, to the point where I dislike it. There are probably other examples that I can think of, but that's the strongest one that I can absolutely think of because it's something that I've wanted to rewrite myself. I would love to write a different, more serious adaptation of the Green Hornet and like just call it Hornet, right? Like you had Arrow in the CW, I would do one called Hornet and make it a TV series. And I've actually thought of ideas and concepts on how to do that, to be honest with you. So that's my answer. Green Hornet, definitely. The Green Hornet 2011 movie. Don't like it whatsoever. Strongly dislike it. Will not watch it again. Because it strays too far away from the original 1967 show. So there you have it. All right, Anthony, that's it for your email missive for this particular week. Thank you as always for your thoughts. Looking forward to hearing your feedback on everything I just commented on here. Good sir. All right, and finally, we'll check in with Alex De Silva. He's got an email this week. Alex De Silva, interested in Star Trek. He says, "Hey Ray, some quick sports ball talk, then on to the geeky stuff. The Face-Off docuseries on Prime was a fun watch," he says, "and it fired me up for the NHL season. The Bruins are 2-1 so far, and as of the time of my writing this, and unfortunately the one team we lost to was Florida, who eliminated us from the playoffs last year. We play them yet again tomorrow, so hopefully we absolutely trounce that stupid, annoying, dirty playing team." Oh, he's still mad. He's definitely still not happy about that playoff series. The Wings, just to speak on it here, they're 1-1-0 because I don't know why they started Ville Husso in net in the home opener against Pittsburgh, but he gave up 5 goals on 14 shots and is now on waivers as where he belongs, as far as I'm concerned. And the actual goalie that we acquired in the offseason, Cam Talbot, on a 2-year deal, he made 40 saves and shut out Nashville. 3-0 just yesterday, just last night, Saturday night. So yeah, we're 1-1-0 to start the season. Cam Talbot, come on, why did you get him in the offseason if you weren't going to start him in the home opener? I don't get that, Derek Lalonde. Whatever, you thought Husso was the hot hand? No, get him the hell out of here. Okay, let's go with Talbot and Alex Lyon for the rest of the season. See where we're at. You don't need 3 goalies. You just need those 2. Anyway, moving on. He says, "Another sports docuseries I checked out is Starting 5 on Netflix, which follows some of the NBA's top starters through last season. I'll be particularly interested in all the Jason Tatum segments as I'll once again get to relive the glory of Banner 18. Ah, yes, Boston fans rejoice." He says, "You know what's not glorious, though? The New England Patriots. Man, this team sucks. I'm typing this email while watching the Week 6 game against the Patriots. The things have been so bad that leadership decided to start Drake May, a fresh out-of-college rookie QB, and things are not looking much better than they have been. I'll keep watching and supporting because I'm already a fan of other Boston sports, but man, I'll just end this by saying I'm glad the Patriots only play once a week. Well, hang on a second here. I was watching Red Zone earlier, as I mentioned, the Lions game. That's how I watch. I watch football through NFL Red Zone, and they were, of course, checking in and out of that particular game, but I didn't necessarily catch how it ended. Some stuff came out. Oh, never mind. I did see this. Yeah, they were playing Houston. C.J. Stroud, who, of course, I did not like in college, but I'm totally a fan of his now in the pros because he went winless against Michigan as the quarterback of the Ohio State Buckeyes. But yeah, they beat They beat the Patriots 41-21. Yeah, that was, and without Nico Collins, he's still hurt. That's their top wide receiver. But yeah, they flexed their muscles a bit. And what are they? Are they 4-1 now? I think the Texans are they're 5-1 now. My goodness, Houston's off to a really, really good start. How about that? Yes, at the Patriots' expense, they are now 1-5. Yep, lean years for the Patriots. Sorry. Lean years for you. He said, update, it's now halftime and May just threw a perfectly executed touchdown pass from nowhere near the end zone. I take back everything I said above. See you with the Super Bowl. Nope, not based on what I just said. Sorry. 1-5 ahoy. It's going to be a long season for Pats fans. Sorry about that. But Alex continues on here to say, so in response to your question of which Marvel or DC movie I'd erase and redo. All right, here's the answer. He says, my choice would be Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I'm not a fan of how they're essentially abandoning the Kang storyline as a result of the Major's court stuff and the critical reception of Ant-Man 3. I don't love the idea of the whole RDJ as Doom thing. I'd much rather the creative team just continue with their original vision. RDJ as Doom feels like much more of a reactionary thing and not what the creative team originally intended to do at this stage of the MCU's life. So to counteract this, I'd want them to redo Ant-Man 3 and put a lot more focus on developing Kang and telling a tighter story than they did, even if it means eventually recasting Kang as a result of the Major stuff. I'd still prefer them to carry out their original creative vision rather than pivoting to the RDJ thing. Interesting. So by taking out Quantumania, it would remove the critical disdain for the Kang character, and it would allow them, I guess you're saying it would allow them to recast in that regard, perhaps? Yeah, it may be. I think that's what he might be saying. So we're pushing aside his appearance, the version of Kang that we got at the end of Loki season 1 and whatever other appearances he was in. I don't remember off the top of my head, but allowing them an opportunity to recast Kang, which they most certainly would if he wasn't necessarily in that movie. I could see that argument. I could definitely see that argument. So you're basically saying that you would want to see the original Kang storyline. That's where you want to start with. You're fine with everything up to that point, but that's where you want to restart. Okay, not a bad answer. Definitely a unique answer with respect to everybody else's answers. So thank you for that, Alex. I do appreciate that. He says, I've seen the first 2 episodes of The Penguin, and it's been just excellent. It's so entertaining to see Oz try to slither his way out of difficult situations. He's so two-faced, no pun intended, and a master liar and manipulator, which is really fun to watch. Although I do think that trying to pull the wool over Sophia's eyes is going to lead to disaster for him. She's currently very emotionally vulnerable, but once those emotions wear off a bit and she starts thinking rationally again, Oz is in trouble. Her BS detector is just way too good to be fooled for long, in my opinion. Looking forward to diving into episode 3 soon. I see where you're coming from with that, Alex. The only thing I will say about that is we do know that this is going to lead into the Batman Part 2, and at that point, Oz will be on top. This whole point is we're seeing his rise to the top. So the Maronis and the Falcones are going to get taken out. Now, what that means for Sophia, I don't know. It'll be intriguing to see where she ends up at the end of this. But at some point, whether she figures that out or not, the future is not looking as bright for her as it is for Oz. I will say that. But we will see. We've got 5 more episodes to go. Episode 4 is actually airing right now on HBO as I'm recording this, to be honest with you. And we'll be talking about that probably tomorrow and the next day or so over at DCTV Squadcast over at Squadcast Media for sure. Me and Scott as well. We've very much been enjoying this show to this point. But here's one that I haven't watched yet. Alex says, Agatha All Along, to my great surprise, has also been pretty enjoyable. The season is doing the classic quest format, which is definitely contributing to my enjoyment of the show. I wasn't expecting much from this show, but I'm genuinely curious to see where things go and how some of the mysteries get resolved. I am waiting for a binge. I will binge this after we're done with the Penguin and all that. I will binge Agatha All Along, and I will definitely offer my thoughts on it. I have heard very good things, and I will probably enjoy it if I had to venture a guess, because again, wide strike zone. and I will find some good in it, even if there are people that don't necessarily care for it. But I haven't heard anybody not necessarily care for it, in my circles anyway. Alex then says, last time around before I'd watched Elementary Dear Data, here we go, getting into Star Trek, I mentioned that I thought Picard's alter ego would make an appearance. What I was referring to was his detective persona that appeared in Season 1 because of the Sherlock allusion in the episode's title. Looks like I was wrong, though, so Picard and Data have these detective personas now. Oh, you mean Dixon Hill. Okay, that's what you were talking about. Dixon Hill. No. Well, first of all, the time periods are not the same, because obviously Holmes is like, what, late 19th century, and Dixon Hill is in the 30s and 40s. So yeah, that's not going to be... And Dixon Hill, like, okay, you're going to see Dixon Hill again. I'll just say that. You will see Dixon Hill again, Alex, but you shouldn't regard it quite in the same realm as you do with, like, Holmes and Data. It's a very different type of... Dixon Hill shows up for very different reasons with respect to Picard, as opposed to why Data continues to go back to Holmes in that regard, why he feels the way he does about Holmes. So I'll just put it that way. But I mean, Dixon Hill's cool. I don't have any issues with that persona whatsoever. But all right, into the episode that he watched. He watched a couple of episodes. He said, this time for the Next Generation, I watched Loud as a Whisper. This episode was all right, if a little bland. The conclusion was quite anticlimactic and lacking in any kind of excitement or real creativity. The idea of Deanna and Riva needing that third wheel interpreter around at first was funny. I thought that this plot was going to inspire some jealousy in Riker, because based off Season 1, I seem to remember there being some romantic tension between Riker and Troy. Oh, there is. And you'll see it again, but this was not the episode for that. I'm kind of with you on that. Loud as a Whisper is kind of a throwaway episode. But again, I told you Season 2 is a little tough to get through. And yeah, this was not one of the stronger episodes of this season. I will definitely say that. But here's the next one I would say was a bit stronger. You said, next I watched The Schizoid Man. That beard on Data, he must have been inspired by Riker. Oh, clearly, no doubt about it. What exactly was the purpose of the near warp transport? I don't entirely remember, to be honest with you, because that part of the episode I don't entirely recall, Alex. But you said Data unironically calling Graves grandpa was pretty funny. The use of the If I Only Had a Heart song from The Wizard of Oz was pretty timely, what with Wicked coming out next month. Do you have any interest in that movie? My wife is a huge fan of the stage show, so she's very hyped for it. No, not really, because I've never seen the stage show, and I do like The Wizard of Oz, but I've only ever seen the original. I haven't even seen Oz the Great and Powerful, to be honest with you, which is kind of remiss of me since it was shot here in Michigan, and I actually toured one of the sound stages, or the sound stage that it was shot on many years ago when it still existed, before it got turned into an Amazon distribution center a few years back. But at any rate, no, Wicked is not one that I'm like jumping out to see. Like I know there's a lot of fanfare behind it. I know there's a huge following for it. It's kind of like the Hamilton thing. I missed the boat on the Hamilton thing as well. Maybe at some point in the not too distant future I'll see it, but you know how that goes as far as the list is concerned. But getting back to the episode, Schizoid Man Alex said, this episode must have been very fun for Spiner to act in, as he essentially got to play a character who's so different from Data. Yeah, he's going to get to do that a lot, and for a variety of different reasons, because of other things that happen to Data over the course of this show. That's all I will say. Prepare for that going forward, because a number of them are fun. In fact, one of them, there's an episode way down the line that he ends up having multiple personalities. And I love why he has multiple personalities, and I thoroughly enjoy just about every multiple personality that he develops. Even though the episode itself is not considered one of the best episodes of the show, I don't care. I really like it. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. You have a long way to go to get to that particular episode. But yes, Brent Spiner absolutely gets to show off his range and his acting chops in a variety of ways throughout the show because of those circumstances that Data is put in, similar to this one. But he says the next episode is called Unnatural Selection. Already? That episode is already in the second season? I feel like you just started season 2. I felt like that episode was toward the end. Oh, that's crazy. Okay. Nope. Unnatural Selection. All right. Fair enough. Well, can't wait to hear what you think about that particular episode. But you said live long and prosper, Alex. Yes, indeed, Alex, live long and prosper. Thank you, as always, for the feedback. Best of luck to your Boston teams, if you will. I'm sure the Bruins will do vastly better than the Pats with respect to their exploits going forward. Who knows what the Celtics will do coming off of their, the defense of their NBA title. We'll see how that goes. And of course, baseball season is over now for the both of us, the Red Sox and the Tigers, going forward, if you will. But thank you for the feedback, as always, good sir. You know what? Hang on, I lied. We do have one more response to get to here in Flight Chat. This comes from Instagram because Amari Daniels, longtime listener, not only comments on YouTube, he also comments on Instagram. And he had a comment with respect to episode 189 where I talked about the DC Studios difference and the official confirmation of Kyle Chandler as Hal Jordan and Aaron Pierre as Jon Stewart for the Lanterns TV show. Amari commented on that and said, now this is a legacy casting that I can get behind. And yes, Swamp Thing and especially Krypton cancellations that I'll never get over, especially after Krypton's fantastic second season leading into what would have been an equally great third. I haven't seen Rebel Ridge, but it's definitely been all the talk these past few days. Yes, of course, he's talking about the fact that Aaron Pierre, I brought up, that he is a legacy casting, a DC legacy casting for Lanterns because he was Dev M, member of the Sagittarii on Krypton, and he was phenomenal, and that show was phenomenal, and yeah, they left us hanging off of 3 separate cliffs. I will never, ever forgive them for that particular cancellation. And Amari says, and the Joker 2 discourse has been ridiculous. While not as great as the first, everything that worked about that film, such as the directing, score, and acting, resonated here. I enjoyed it and found it just as dark as the first. And yes, I know scoreboard mentality is poisonous, but if there's one thing that DC could say for the longest time, it was having the highest grossing R-rated comic book film. That's been surpassed now by courtesy of Deadpool and Wolverine, and it does make me wonder if at any point any future DC project may be able to hold a box office crown. Oh, I think so. I absolutely think so, Amari. What it's really going to come down to is going to come down to the success of the DCU, truthfully, because I don't know that a standalone project is going to be able to do it, unless it was a legacy project, right? Deadpool and Wolverine, they broke that record not because of the R rating, but because it was a legacy movie that celebrated the legacy of Fox Marvel and the legacy of Hugh Jackman's Wolverine and Deadpool's connection to that over the past 20 plus years in an R-rated film, right? And we can adjudicate that and judge it based on the other 2 Deadpool movies. How well do they connect? How well do they, seamlessly integrate within each other as much as we like? But there's very much kind of a No Way Home vibe with respect to what Deadpool and Wolverine did. And, that's unique in that regard, right? Because it's not really about the R rating. It's just about the nostalgia and what it meant to people like me and those of us who were massive fans of Fox Marvel back in the day and the nostalgia that we felt when we watched that film, right? That's what led to the popularity. That's what led to the grosses. And so I think if DC does something like that, like if there was a Kingdom Come movie, right? Let's say the DCU goes off without a hitch or maybe some minor hitches and, it develops and it builds into this nice, tidy little franchise, if you will. Like say it's quite a successful franchise. I'm not necessarily predicting MCU success, but let's say it's halfway or 3/4 of the way as successful as the MCU. And then they get far enough down the road that we see a Kingdom Come movie. And that's when we see Henry Cavill come back. That's when we see Ben Affleck come back. That type of thing, right? That I think absolutely could most certainly blow apart the box office, right? And of course it depends on a number of other things, but I think DC most certainly can. The popularity of Batman, the popularity of Superman, the popularity of DC Comics characters, yes, I do think future DC projects can hold box office crowns. The first one that probably would be able to would be Batman, right? Because I imagine that the Batman Part 2 will not have a 45-day release window restriction like the first one did. I imagine they're going to keep that in theaters for as long as possible. And so if that does well, which I suspect that it will, because the first one did well, and the Penguin is doing extremely well on HBO, then yes, I think that film most certainly could hold a box office crown. Which one? I don't know, but we'll find out. And yeah, I think the success of the DCU, yes, I absolutely think it's possible. Most certainly I do. I don't think that the days are over for DC being able to hold box office crowns. I don't think that at all. Because again, I think that superhero movies are considered its own genre with Marvel and DC by the general audience. It just comes down to the popular heroes and who is made popular and how the marketing goes and how the general audience responds and reacts to it. And I think it's absolutely possible. DC has done it before. Remember, they were the first to $1 billion. The Dark Knight was the first one to make $1 billion at the box office, and that was unprecedented at the time. And then, of course, Marvel did it multiple times within the MCU and continues to do it, right? And they've broken $2 billion, right? That's not to say, and then DC comes out with a $1 billion R-rated film. Marvel does that with Deadpool and Wolverine. You know what? How about this? Let's say that perhaps, maybe Dynamic Duo, and this is, going out there. I'm not officially predicting this, but I'm just saying hypothetically, what if Dynamic Duo was so successful as an animated film, it becomes the highest grossing animated film? What if it outgrosses the Spider-Verse films? Becomes the highest grossing animated comic book movie of all time. And then, then it would be incumbent to see if Marvel Studios can do that. I don't know if they're really set to do that, but that's absolutely a box office crown that I could see happening, since we know Dynamic Duo is going to get a theatrical release. Again, it just depends on many factors with DC Studios and many factors with how the general audience responds to it. But yeah, I do believe most definitely future DC projects can hold box office crowns. It's just going to depend on the circumstances, no doubt about it. The door will never be slammed shut as long as there is an audience for superhero content, and there most certainly is still an audience for superhero and comic book movie content in that regard, Amari. So that's my answer to that. Thank you, as always, for your feedback, good sir. I will do the best I can to make certain that I catch it on Instagram or on YouTube, either one of those frequencies that you decide to share it with, good sir. And that is going to do it for this particular episode of Flight Chat. Thank you so much for those of you that contributed to the feedback this week. Thank you to John. Thank you to Anthony for your email missive. Thank you to Alex De Silva. And thank you to Amari Daniels for your feedback. If you have any thoughts with anything that those four gentlemen brought up or anything that I had to say in response to them, and you want to join the feedback circle here at Flight Chat, you know where to find me on Threads at The Flightcast, on Instagram at The Flightcast. There's also the Flightcast Facebook page, and of course I can be reached by email at ray@theflightcast.com. All right, take care, stay safe out there, have a great week, and I will see you all next time. Take it easy.